Hi everyone, so welcome to the second lecture for research methods. In this lecture, we're going to be focusing much more on the specifics of doing health research and some of the questions that you might want to be asking when looking at health research and in particular health inequalities. So health research has a vast range of aims and objectives, and we started to explore some of those different aims and objectives in the previous lecture. So this means that when we're formulating research questions, when we're thinking about the role of the research that we want to do, we're tapping into this whole host of different reasons that health research is important. But importantly, we also need to think about health research as being situated within a wider, much broader set of initiatives aiming to ensure the good health of the population. So Rothman talks about this kind of wider role of health research and the positioning of health research within this wider community. So Rothman argues that health research is part of a community effort to protect, maintain and improve the health of the population by organised means, including preventative programmes, hygiene, education and other interventions. So health research is not the be all and end all, but it's certainly one of the key mechanisms in thinking about how we can improve the health of the population and thinking about some of the different ways that we can do that. So looking at different types of interventions, how can we educate people about their health and making healthy decisions? How might we be able to develop preventative programs? So health research is very much part of this really important goal for ensuring the continued developing health of our population. So what I'd actually like you to do here is just pause the video for about 5 minutes to give yourself the time to do a little bit of free writing. Now, if you've not done free writing before, it's a really good little kind of writing tool that I tend to recommend to most of my students, particularly if you're, just starting out on an essay, if you're trying to kind of map out the ideas that you've got going in your head. Free writing is a really good technique to force yourself to put those ideas onto a piece of paper. So aim to do it for about 5 minutes without stopping. Now, the key thing with this is that it does not need to make sense what you write down. And so we want you to just keep going with it without stopping. So don't stop and think, does what I've said make sense? Am I going off on one? If anything, we want you to go off in a tangent and just see where your mind takes you. It can really help to tap into some of those ideas that you've got swimming around in your head, but aren't really able to articulate that. So what I want you to do is to think about these 3 kind of questions on the slides and to use these as prompts to get you started with free writing. So I want you to think about what the purpose of health research is. And we spoke about this quite a lot in the last lecture, and then we've briefly just kind of gone over it then as well. What kind of things can health research tell us, and what should it strive to achieve? So like I said, I want you to pause the video for about 5 minutes and do yourself a little bit of free writing to try and kind of get your ideas about this. Once you've done it, you might want to have a little read through. Can you highlight any kind of key terms, key issues that you've come up against? Has it helped you to think through what health research is, and then maybe what your approach to doing health research would be? So once you've thought about what health research is, we're now going to be thinking about what can determine health inequality. So if we're going to be developing health research that targets health inequality, it's obviously important for us to think about the different kind of factors that actually can impact one's access to health or the inaccessibility of health for some people. And this is really what we're asking you to do in the research portfolio. So the portfolio is about you thinking, choosing a certain topic, a certain key issue within the broader realm of health inequality. So again, I want you to just kind of pause the video for a few minutes and just try and write down as many factors as you can As many that you can kind of remember that come to mind, factors that you think can determine health inequality. So you might want to think back to level C. We did social determinants in level C, or some of the other things that have maybe come up when we've been thinking about public health issues. So pause, take a couple of minutes, and then come back to the presentation, and we can chat about all of these different ideas in the seminars and tutorials. So some of the things that you might have included, that you might have thought about then in determining health inequality. So we've got a range of socio-economic factors, things like income, employment status, education. We've also got geographical factors that can impact health inequality. So by geographical factors, we're thinking about different regions. So something that's been highly debated in relation to COVID, for example, is that north-south divide in access to support, particularly financial support. So looking at different regions and the access to health that these different regions have got. We can also think more specific about the geography and about maybe environmental characteristics. So are people living in urban or rural communities? And actually, how does that come to impact one's access to health and health equality? What kind of facilities are available in people's local neighbourhoods, in people's local environments? And when we're thinking about these kinds of facilities, we might be thinking about access to clean, safe, green spaces outside, for example, to be able to do exercise, to be able to go out and enjoy the environment around you. We might also be thinking about local amenities, so shops, are you surrounded by coffee shops and local bistros, or actually are there a lot of takeaway places around you, for example? So thinking about some of the environmental characteristics that surround us can really, really help paint a picture of the type of health and the level of health equality in particular areas. Something that we also think about are more specific characteristics for individuals, so those identity characteristics. So we can think about sex, ethnicity, disability, for example. So we know, don't we, from research, that there are these relationships between the level of deprivation experienced by those from ethnic minority backgrounds and disabled people, for example. So we know that there are those health discrepancies there. So research might be seeking to explain some of those health discrepancies or kind of explore them in more detail. Now, something that we've been thinking about much more recently is moving away from simply the identity characteristics that are protected in law, and actually some of the other socially excluded groups within our society. So we can think about people that are experiencing rough sleeping or homelessness, sex workers, older populations. So these are those groups of people that might be at risk of further marginalisation from society, which then can lead to huge implications in being able to access health support and the ability to actually make healthy choices and lead healthy lifestyles. Finally, we can think more about the behaviour of certain individuals. So this is much more an individualistic approach. So what kinds of healthy or risky behaviours do people engage with? And what can that tell us about the relationship between that to wider socioeconomic factors? So here we're not just thinking about blaming individuals for engaging in risky behaviours, but seeking to really explain, why are some groups more likely to be engaging with those behaviours. So we have research that's conducted by organisations such as the King's Trust and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. And these organisations are really, really key in researching health inequality and raising awareness of health inequality, particularly in relation to the wider context that health is situated in. So rather than problematising individuals for making poor health choices, these organisations take a much broader view of health and think about the types of socioeconomic and environmental conditions that people are living in that impact upon health. And so these include income, education, access to green space and healthy food, the type of work that people do, and the homes that they live in. So a lot of those things that we just looked at in the previous slide. And then McLean et al. Also state the importance of looking at social and economic conditions, as well as their distribution within and between populations. So, and how these influence differences in health status. So this is about really making the connection between economic and social conditions and the different types of groups of people that we have. So it's not just about saying that, you know, a certain area might be more deprived, but actually what's the impact of that on people living in that area? How does that impact their health status and ability to lead a healthy life? So something else that we need to measure is health inequality. So we're thinking about how do we measure that? So we need to obviously identify what we've said, social determinants of health, so what impacts health inequality, but actually what are the kinds of relationships and phenomena that we need to be researching that can help us to identify those determinants, and importantly really help us to challenge them in a productive way. So there are a lot of ways that we can do this. So a range of ways, both drawing upon qualitative methods and quantitative methods that can help us to research and measure health inequality. For example, we might look at health status. So for example, drawing upon data, upon figures about life expectancy and prevalence of different health conditions, issues like morbidity, mortality. So we can access, you know, really quite useful data about mortality figures, for example, in relation to different areas with different levels of deprivation, or you know, the prevalence of health conditions for people working in different sectors of employment. So we can really kind of describe relationships there between these statistics and the types of people and populations that they're impacting. We can also look at access to care, and this can be measured from both a qualitative and quantitative approach. So access to care, so we could look at the availability of treatment, and not just availability of treatment, but you know, where that takes place. So what kind of areas have greater availability of different kinds of treatments? Does that differ depending on the deprivation within a certain area or the region that we're looking at? We can also look at data surrounding the number of people accessing care by population. So we can look at the different types of populations and who isn't accessing this kind of treatment. Beyond this, we can ask people about their experience of accessing care. So this isn't going to describe to us the availability of treatment on a wide scale, but what it's actually going to tell us is how people experience that process of trying to access care. So what kind of barriers might people have experienced, and how can we relate that back to you know, socioeconomic conditions? How might that explain different health inequalities? Similarly, we can look at quality and experience of care. And again, from a quantitative approach, we can look at, you know, numeric data on levels of patient satisfaction. So how people rate, you know, their satisfaction of quality and experience of care. Again, we can also look more deeper into that and talk to people about their experiences of care and really try and get their own meaning making and reflections of care within our knowledge production. So it depends upon the types of questions that we're asking and what kind of knowledge you're interested in. So were you interested in you know, big data that can tell us, paint a picture about the UK context, for example, or actually you're interested in that personal experience of care in order to make recommendations that way? In addition, we can look at behavioural risks to health through smoking, alcohol, drug taking, obesity, the types of food that we eat. And again, we can we can investigate relationships between who is engaging in these kinds of risky behaviours. But also importantly, what are the reasons for engaging within those behaviours? So again, not just kind of problematising certain groups of people for choosing to smoke, for example, or choosing not to eat healthily, but looking at the underlying socioeconomic condition that actually might predetermine the way that those decisions play out. And then finally, we can look at wider determinants of health. So quality of housing, for example, and again, how quality of housing is distributed amongst the population. So before Christmas, we were thinking a lot about public health and the different approaches to understanding public health issues and the different kind of interventions that have been or that could be put in place in order to tackle those issues. And we can think about research on a similar level in terms of thinking about the different levels that health inequality occurs, and that actually the relationship between health inequality and all of these wider socioeconomic conditions, community networks, individual life factors. So health inequality isn't a neat and single story. We've got these range of factors that are all at play, and they all interact with each other, which is what makes it so important to really understand that complexity and see how these different layers are influencing each other. So we've got individual lifestyle factors, social and community networks, and then beyond that we've got socio-economic, cultural and environmental conditions. And we've spoke about many of these already, and we touched upon them whilst doing public health before Christmas. So it's important to recognise then that as health researchers, you're probably going to be thinking about health inequality on all of these levels. And when you come to research, you might be looking at the interaction between two of them, for example. So we might be looking at the interaction between unemployment and age, or housing and ethnic minority backgrounds. We might look at the work environment in relation to sex, for example. So we might be looking, we might be researching health inequality on a number of these levels. And that's really important to do, because then we're not just focusing solely on one level, but we're seeing actually how there are many things that can shape a person's access to health and the impact of health inequality for different people. So like I said before, this is going to be a really, really good opportunity for you to think about your own research interests. So thinking about for next year, what is it that you actually want to go and design and plan? What kind of research project do you want to do? So importantly, this year, you're not going to be doing a research project. We're just going to be thinking about, helping you choose a potential topic, think about scoping out the literature, and then planning a project as if you were going to do it. But it's not until next year that you actually go and do a research project. And you please don't think that the project that you plan this year is what you have to go and do next year. That's not the case at all. This is just a kind of a way of introducing you to some of the issues that we have to think through when we're planning research. So when we're starting a project, we're considering all of the points that we've discussed so far, and we need to be highly motivated in terms of wanting to have positive outcomes for our research. So social research is motivated by a range of different reasons. And for Greiman, it might be motivated by developments and changes in society, such as the rise of binge drinking, and then it's employing social scientific ideas to illuminate those changes. So again, if we think back to before Christmas, we were looking at public health throughout history. we saw that, you know, many of the issues that we're experiencing now, such as climate change, obesity, binge drinking, these have not always been issues. So it's about thinking about public health as a continually evolving kind of area of research that needs to be really attentive to the context that it's occurring within. So to begin research and to start a project, we obviously need to identify what that thing is that we're, you know, motivated to go and research, that we're interested in. But then we also need to research the literature. So identifying key themes, patterns, trends, gaps in the literature. Are there any inconsistencies between different research findings? And or societal developments that mean that this is a really important topic, you know, right now for us to go and research. So for this week, then in tutorials, we're going to be looking at an overview of the research portfolio. So kind of giving you an insight to the whole portfolio, but also providing much deeper guidance for your first portfolio task. In the seminar, the first half of this is going to be with Fiona Hare from the library team. So she's going to be supporting you in finding literature within health and wellbeing, and being able to search for literature specifically relating to your topic. So she's going to give you a load of different core techniques for you to actually search for literature more effectively. And then we'll meet back for the second half in our seminars. If you've got any questions about the lecture content this week, please feel free to get in touch or to drop into my office hours. But if not, I'll see some of you in tutorials and seminars this week. Thank you.